Yeah, the smoke is still here, although it's really humid today. Yeah, hopefully it'll go away soon. I know it's causing a lot of heck for a lot of people with health issues. Oh, wonder what was going on there. There actually was a lot of security related types of news today, like with things like the drones. I was trying to read your guys' comments about that missing part on my Mavic Pro controller, whatever it was. And you guys were suggesting things like what is this, a small bolt or a little nut? And you guys were suggesting maybe keep it something like plastic and not metal. It might interfere with the reception. Still actually curious how it even came off in the first place. I actually put a temporary solution that I'll show you guys after. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm assuming it won't affect the signal. The first strange piece of news I read was something about an Instagram model that got kidnapped. Apparently she got a job or something like that through her agent. They sent her there, but it ended up being kidnappers. And I guess to return her, there was like a ransom. Either pay the money or they threatened to sell her on the dark web, according to all this stuff. While I've actually heard of stuff like this before, the interesting thing was how they let her go. It wasn't somebody saving her, like the police or anything like that. It's apparently the kidnappers have some kind of rule saying they won't kidnap mothers, and they found out that she was a parent. So because of that, they let her go. To me personally, the story just doesn't seem real on so many levels. I mean, they spent all this time and effort trying to find out who to kidnap, and wouldn't you go through the person's feed to find out like they're a parent, like having pictures of the baby and all that? Apparently the police did a reenactment of this too. They put themselves in this huge body bag just to show what the victim went through potentially. It makes me wonder if people in the police force play rock, paper, scissors to see who's gonna have to do that for the day, I guess to educate people on what happened. So there was this story today where it said something about police push tracking for civilian drones. I believe this is like in the US. And it's basically using the point how there was, for example, some kind of fire around the area in California. And while they were doing that, a drone flyer came in, which basically disrupted everything. And the reaction is kind of interesting. It says, such intrusions along with fears of drones being used by terrorists have law enforcement urging that millions of civilian drones be outfitted with radio tracking devices so they can be identified. And to me personally, that's an example of something being overblown, someone doing something stupid and now you associate that with people using it like as a terrorist and all that. I wouldn't say that about cars, for example, just because one stupid guy goes into a place where he's not supposed to park and everything like that. Well, that's it. I have to associate all cars with terrorists, so they need some kind of tracking device now. I guess just to emphasize their reasoning, it's kind of like here it says somewhere in Stockholm, the airport had a total chaos because of a drone as well. So I guess these type of stories actually compound to people like that saying like, yeah, there should be tracking devices and all that on drones. I personally agree with the notion that a lot of you brought up too, like if it comes down to registration and stuff like that, putting contact stuff, like say something like a license plate on a drone, it should be more for people of authority to have access to the information, not have the whole public have this, which is a little crazy in terms of security and privacy. I mean, again, with stuff like this, you should be protecting everybody, the drone flyer, the civilian, everybody. That was odd. Yeah, again, I think the drone flyers too. I mean, even here in Canada, you had like crazy nut jobs, like what, 13-year-old kid's drone getting shot down by a gun. Imagine if that information got into the wrong hands. That made me think of a story I read just a couple of days ago. It was about people being kind of upset about people like DJI trying to play the cop, like restricting people's flights. It's costing, I guess, commercial people money because they can't fly in places where they actually have permission to do so. Like there are many people would say, hey, they bought the product, they own it. If someone does something stupid to it, then, you know, punish those people individually. Don't try to put something in there that controls everybody. Like leave that to whatever, like the countries, their own laws and all that, and their own law enforcement to take care of it. Well, it's interesting to read. Apparently, in relations to all this, apparently the US Army thought that all DJI drone products had like a security hazard or something like that. And apparently it has something to do with the data, where I guess they're afraid that it'll go into the wrong hands, or maybe it's keeping track of stuff that they don't really want the company to have. And so because of that, they're urging everyone, like in the military, to stop using all DJI products, the apps and so forth. I mean, in some funny ways, it makes me think, if it's not okay for like really the top security people like in the world to have stuff like that happen to them, then why would it be okay for a regular down-to-earth person at the same time? To me, this is one of those topics where you really have to open up your mind and try to see it from all angles. I wouldn't necessarily say, completely abolish stuff like that. There shouldn't ever be any tracking anything. I think it should come down to intent and purpose of what you're using, like say the drone for. Like from what I'm reading, a lot of big manufacturers say, yeah, they love the idea of registration and tracking. That's so like delivery companies can fly in peace without the fear of, I guess, a recreational person flying into the way. But you have to consider it for everyone, like the little kid flying a drone, for example. I mean, why should they be tracked, like flying in a backyard or something like that? I mean, huge difference with someone flying like something huge to transport something versus someone flying in an open field for fun. And what if that data gets into the wrong hands? So to me, it should come down again to intent and purpose of why the person's flying and with what. In many ways, I feel like we already have the answers and other things in our lives that we can just transfer them to the drones, like how we handle people flying them for fun, commercially and all that, like even with the car license plate. I mean, that makes sense. Put a license plate on the car, and if someone of authority needs it, they pull up that information. Whereas we don't use that same common sense, like at least here in Canada. Like they're asking people to actually literally put your full contact information and stuff on the actual drone. It's just kind of funny how we overlook stuff like that. I know it's a new tech and all, but holy, the hysteria, man. Like when people go crazy over stuff they don't understand. I'm actually really curious to see how companies like DJI respond to this in the long term. Because I know in terms of things like the data and the sharing, giving permission and all that, it just doesn't seem like it's too big of a deal. I mean, people are still buying the drones, but when you have people like this, the whole military saying stop using the product, will they actually kind of adjust their attitude in terms of the type of information they track and all that? In many ways, business-wise, I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually a catalyst to open up the opportunity for competition. But things as simple as a web browser, I mean, same thing. When people found out one big company with their browser is keeping track of their details, they immediately went to the one that's bare bones and doesn't do any of that. So it can happen in terms of people losing their market share. Would any of that stuff suffice to fill in that little gap in the antenna? For me, I think right now it's more about wondering, well, what actually affects the signal, if anything.
I'll do the help here.
Yeah, I guess the air is making people weaker for the people that can't normally take it. Today I thought I'd specifically try to capture the red sunlight. I guess I'll just leave the drone hanging up there for a while. And this is what I did to temporarily close that hole. I literally just put like a little tissue paper and jammed it in there. Things like the color temperature is still so confusing. Even the auto white balance says it should be really low, but I remember from the Canada day when I took of the sunrise, it looked way too blue. So I tried it today with a little higher white balance. Let's see how it turns out. Anyways, see you guys later.